I let all three of my husband's friends in. You won't believe what happened next. True story, they say some moments haunt you forever. Not just because of what happened, but because of who you became when it did. For me, it all started on a rainy Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that feels heavy even before anything goes wrong. The sky was this dull, washed-out gray, like it couldn't decide whether to cry or just keep everything bottled up. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the rain streak down the glass, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely alone. David, my husband, had left earlier that morning for yet another business trip. No goodbye kiss. No warm smile, just a rush to take care. And the sound of the front door clicking shut behind him. And as I watched him drive away, I couldn't help but wonder, when did we become so distant? When did my presence start feeling like background noise in his life? The kids were away for the weekend, staying with their grandmother. So the silence in the house? It wasn't peaceful, it was loud. That kind of silence that creeps into your chest and makes your heart ache. I wandered from room to room, tidying things that didn't need to be tidied, just to feel like I was still here, still useful, still visible. That's when my phone buzzed. A group message from John, one of David's closest friends. But the chat included Chris and Lucas too. All three of them. They said they were nearby. They wanted to drop in and hang out for a bit. Now maybe I should have said no. Maybe I should have thought twice. But I didn't. I paused for a moment, fingers hovering over the screen, and then I typed back, "Sure, come on over." And just like that, I opened a door I didn't realize I'd never be able to close. I tried to pretend it was no big deal. Just friends visiting, people I'd known for years. But when they walked through that door, something shifted. I could feel it. The air felt warmer, thicker. Their laughter filled the space David used to fill. And for the first time in what felt like forever, someone actually looked at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. John gave me this soft smile, like he saw something in me I'd forgotten was there. Chris cracked jokes like he always did, but this time there was a certain sharpness in his tone. And Lucas? He hugged me like he meant it. Like he remembered how it felt to hold a woman close. I brushed it off. I told myself I was being silly. That it was just my imagination running wild. But deep down I knew something had already started. Something emotional. I was emotionally distant and longed for connection. And I was standing in a quiet house with three men who suddenly made me feel valued. What happened next? I've never told anyone. Not even myself. Not really. Because admitting it out loud would mean accepting who I became that day. But if you stay with me, if you really want to know, I'll tell you everything. Just be warned, this isn't the kind of story with heroes and villains. It's messier than that. It's real, and it changed everything. So before we go any further, take a breath, hit that subscribe button to let the heartfelt tales unfold. Because the rest of this story, well, you're not going to believe what happened next. I married young. Maybe too young. Back then, everything felt simple, like love alone would be enough to build a life on. In the beginning, it existed. David captivated me completely. He embodied a certain confidence, a relentless drive, effortlessly becoming the focal point of any gathering he entered. With just one remark, he had the power to send ripples of laughter across the entire table. He harbored dreams, grand and ambitious, and I held unwavering faith in each and every one of them. He filled me with pride. I longed to be his refuge, his sanctuary. For a time, I believe I truly was. Yet, time possesses an uncanny ability to erode even the most steadfast of things. Amidst the late nights at the office, the promotions, the relentless deadlines, and the fleeting dinners, David gradually ceased to perceive me as he once did. He began to arrive home later, his smile fading, his touch feeling obligatory rather than desired. We continued to occupy the same bed, yet the distance that lay between us felt far colder than the fabric that enveloped us. I made an attempt. Alas, I made my earnest attempt. I began preparing his beloved dishes once more. Candles flickered to life. Once I indulged in the purchase of new lingerie. He hardly lifted his gaze from the screen, murmuring that he was weary. I smiled and nodded as if I comprehended. Yet within, a fracture deepened ever so slightly. We are blessed with 2 children, vibrant and lively, their laughter filling our home with joy. When they return, the house transforms into a genuine sanctuary. Fingers smudged against the fridge door, crayon masterpieces adorning the walls, tiny footsteps pattering down the hallway. Their laughter was once the thread that wove my existence into something whole. Yet, even amidst their happiness, the undeniable truth lingered that David was perpetually lost in another realm. He was present in body undeniably. Yet, on an emotional level, It had been months since he and I had shared the same space, thus I filled the silence in the only manner I understood. I immerse myself in the endeavor of transforming our home into a space that exudes warmth and invitation. If I was unable to mend our marriage, perhaps I could tend to the environment that surrounds it. The living room transformed into my personal endeavor. Delicate beige drapes cascade gracefully, while throw pillows adorned with golden accents invite comfort. Eucalyptus candles flicker softly in the corners, casting a warm glow. A cozy blanket draped over the arm of the sofa, family pictures elegantly framed in would line the staircase. Myself, David, and the children. Chilled grins. Silence hides truths. During that period, his friends began to visit more frequently. John stood as the pioneer. He would occasionally swing by on weekends, claiming he was merely passing through, yet he consistently arrived with a little something in hand. Delicate pastries, a fine bottle of wine, and on one occasion, a charming little bouquet of flowers for the gracious hostess. He would perch at the kitchen island, engaging me in conversation as I folded laundry or prepared dinner. He wasn't flirtatious, not in the conventional sense. Yet, his presence held a certain solace. He paid attention. He inquired about the events of my day. He chuckled at my tales as if they were genuinely amusing. Chris arrived as well, brimming with exuberance and a vibrant presence. He would present the children with small tokens of affection. Comic books, sweets, and at one point, even a miniature drone. The children held him in the highest regard. I found solace in the distraction. He was audacious, perpetually jesting, referring to me as the queen of the castle and the Wonder Mom. Initially, it seemed innocuous, merely jesting. Yet, at times, a fire flickered within his gaze. A gaze that held a moment too long in the absence of David. And then came Lucas. Lucas stood apart from the rest. He spoke less frequently. There was no necessity for him to do so. His presence exuded a serene, assured aura that drew you in, compelling you to experience it more intimately. He observed the subtle transformations, the way my hair shifted in style, the fresh hue of lipstick that adorned my lips. He rendered me seen, as if I remained a figure deserving of attention. It is valuable information to possess. Initially, it was understated. Simply informal drop-ins. A gentle rap upon the door. David is home. Oh, is that so? May I enter regardless? I never uttered the word no. In all honesty, I found myself in a state of solitude, not merely solitary. Isolated. A solitude that clings to your heart, tightening its grip in the absence of an audience. I longed for the warmth of a gentle touch, the sound of a kind voice, the feeling of being truly acknowledged. I longed for the sense of significance that once enveloped me. With David, life had transformed into a series of items to be ticked off. Essentials, expenses, academic gatherings. Yet, in the company of his friends? A chuckle escaped me once more. A sense of buoyancy enveloped me, neither completely complete nor entirely unseen. I was acutely aware of the peril that lay ahead. I envisioned the possibilities it could embody. Yet, in moments of longing for love, even the smallest gestures can transform into a lavish banquet. In that serene, tastefully adorned home, infused with the scent of eucalyptus candles and the echoes of cherished memories I sought to safeguard, 3 men entered, unwittingly crossing into a realm that David had left invitingly ajar. At that moment, it barely registered in my mind. I reassured myself that it was simply a part of the ordinary flow of life. Pure. Yet, in retrospect, I sensed that a part of me was aware all along. A shift was imminent. And none among us would depart unscathed. It began in a straightforward manner. David was preparing for yet another journey, a weekend business retreat organized by his company. All is as expected. He was perpetually on the move, perpetually nestled in a hotel within the confines of a conference room, pursuing the next opportunity. At that point, I had ceased my inquiries. I ceased to feign any semblance of distress. On the eve of his departure, amidst the flurry of packing, he nonchalantly remarked that his friends might drop by during his absence. He mentioned, hardly glancing away from his suitcase, that they would likely spend some time together, perhaps watching the game or something similar. Simply, show kindness. Ensure their comfort is prioritized. A soft chuckle escaped me, primarily fueled by incredulity. So, I find myself hosting your friends in your absence? He pressed a fleeting kiss to my cheek, a gesture more rooted in formality than in warmth, and remarked, "You've always been a wonderful hostess." And thus it came to an end. That was the defining moment. So diminutive, merely commonplace. Yet it is precisely those that catch you off guard. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the rain began its descent, arriving earlier than expected, softly at the outset, gradually intensifying. The sound tapped rhythmically on the windows, a subtle harbinger of what was to come. I set the candles aglow in the living room, enveloping the house in a warm embrace of coziness. I thought that if I were to spend the weekend in the company of 3 men, I should create an atmosphere that felt inviting. I donned a modest dress, devoid of extravagance and not overly revealing, yet it embraced my form just enough to remind me of my identity as a woman, beyond the roles of wife and mother. At approximately 5:30, the doorbell chimed. First came John, followed by Chris, and then Lucas. Every individual bore a burden of their own. John arrived with a bottle of red wine in hand. Chris indulged in a selection of snacks. Lucas arrived with a bouquet of flowers. Not intended for David, for my own sake. With a charming smile, he presented me with a delicate bouquet of white lilies. A sweet gesture for our gracious hostess. My breath hitched, yet I managed to smile, feigning nonchalance, feigning indifference as my heart danced ever so slightly. We took our places in the living room. The fire crackled softly, the wine exhaled its rich bouquet, and the laughter? It danced through the air. It glided effortlessly, with remarkable ease. We reminisced about our college days, shared tales of the kids, discussed work, exchanged thoughts on movies, covering a vast array of topics. Chris couldn't help but tease me about my sophisticated wine taste when I unveiled the glasses. Without a word of request, John took it upon himself to assist in setting the table. Lucas's gaze lingered on me throughout the whole experience, silently, with great attention. I prepared a delightful dinner of roasted chicken, accompanied by creamy garlic mashed potatoes and vibrant green beans sprinkled with almonds. I had crafted it countless times in the past, yet that evening it carried an unmistakable weight of distinction. With meticulous attention, I arranged it on the plate, embellishing it with delicate garnishes as if I were preparing a meal for someone special. They observed. They showered praise upon the food, my kitchen, and the atmosphere. I found myself blushing more often than I care to confess. And then the wine arrived. 1 glass transformed into 2. What began as 2 blossomed into 3. The laughter swelled, the eye contact stretched into moments of intensity, and the casual touches, such as John's hand grazing my arm as he moved past, started to pulse with an electric energy. Chris quipped about David's good fortune. Lucas remained silent, his expression unchanged. He merely cast his gaze in my direction. That look is forever etched in my memory. It lacked any overt suggestion. It wasn't truly inappropriate, not in the strictest sense, yet it was undeniably intense. Silence. A gaze that conveyed a depth of unexpressed thoughts. A question lingers in the air between us. My heart fluttered unexpectedly. Not out of fear. For the first time in ages, I experienced a sensation that had long eluded me. Noted, seeking, vibrant. And I, feigning ignorance, chose to overlook it. I averted my gaze, chuckling at yet another of Chris's tales, and filled my glass with more wine. Yet the harm had already been inflicted. That evening, once they departed and the house returned to its quietude, I found myself in the kitchen, gazing at the half-empty bottle resting on the counter. The faint aroma of Lucas's cologne hung delicately in the air. John's gentle voice lingered in my ears. The resonance of Chris's laughter continues to ripple through the floor. Yet it was the intensity of Lucas's gaze that lingered in my thoughts the longest. It trailed behind me as I ascended the stairs, into the sanctuary of my bedroom, delving into the depths of my mind. As I reclined in solitude, my gaze fixed upon the ceiling, I pondered the reasons behind my restless spirit. Such warmth. Utterly unsettled, I reassured myself that it was merely wine, only solitude, merely a flight of fancy. Yet beneath the surface I was aware of the truth. A transformation had occurred that night. Something genuine, perilous situation, and I sensed it deeply. Our journey was merely at its inception. Was it inappropriate to relish the attention? The question lingered in my mind the following day, repeating endlessly like a broken record I was unable to silence. Is it wrong to desire to be desired? To yearn for the way their gaze lingered? To bask in the warmth of their laughter, as if I were the most enchanting presence in the room? I repeatedly reassured myself that my thoughts were absurd. Intense, I found myself enveloped in loneliness, allowing my imagination to run wild. Yet the reality? The reality was more straightforward and more chaotic. A deep hunger gnawed at me. Not intended for consumption. This is not intended for gifting purposes, yet it is for the sake of connection. for something that elevated me beyond the confines of a housewife trapped in a monotonous cycle. Indeed, I am a mother. Indeed, I am a wife. Yet, prior to all of that, I existed as myself. Somewhere along this winding path, I found myself adrift, consumed by the demands of others, neglecting my own desires. That morning, I lingered before the bathroom mirror, lost in thought longer than I typically would. I traced the delicate lines that had begun to etch themselves beneath my eyes, lines that David never appeared to acknowledge. With deliberate precision, I applied the mascara, taking my time with each stroke. Applied a touch of blush. I donned the fragrance that had remained untouched for months. I yearned to experience a sensation. Everything. In that moment, a vivid memory washed over me. To the outset, in the early days of David and myself, how he would tenderly kiss the back of my hand for no reason at all. He would pause mid-sentence, turning to me with a soft gaze, and declare that I was beautiful. How we were unable to resist the pull of each other in those days. Reasons were unnecessary for us. Timing was unnecessary for us. We simply required one another. Yet, amidst the flurry of work meetings and school pickups, amid the weight of unpaid bills and the silence of unvoiced resentments, we lost the art of touch. Even in the comfort of his own home, he scarcely lifted his gaze from the screen of his phone. The warmth in his eyes had settled into a familiar monotony. The thrill had morphed into a sense of duty. Upon entering the room, David would always brighten up. At that moment, he hardly even flinched. As Lucas's gaze met mine, it mirrored the way David once looked at me, when John addressed me as if I held significance. When Chris brought forth laughter from me that I hadn't experienced in months. What reason could I possibly have to remain silent? Regret lingers in my mind. I should have declined the invitation for dinner on that second night. However, I refrained from doing so. Later that afternoon, they reached out once more, inquiring whether I would be home, and if they could swing by to enjoy a movie and some takeout. I halted, my gaze fixed on the screen of my phone. I recall simply standing there, gazing at the screen for what felt like an eternity. My thumb lingered above the keyboard, poised for action. My heart raced with a heightened rhythm. I was clear about my actions. Not quite. A sense of bewilderment enveloped me as I pondered the reasons behind my desire for it. It was never about deceit. It was never about seeking vengeance. The focus was never on them. The focus was on me. Concerning the frigid void within my chest that has been amplifying with each passing day. The silence that enveloped me when David withdrew his hand lingers still. Concerning the pain that settled in each night I found myself alone in slumber, even with him lying next to me. I composed a pair of words. Of course, please join me. They made their entrance just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Chris exuded his characteristic swagger, John wore his serene smile, and then there was Lucas. Lucas embodying that same quiet intensity. Food was brought to them. Thai cuisine is a vibrant tapestry of flavors, aromas, and textures that dance on the palate. Each dish tells a story, weaving together the rich cultural heritage and culinary traditions of Thailand. From the fiery heat of chili to the soothing sweetness of coconut, every ingredient plays a crucial role in creating a harmonious balance that is both exciting and comforting. The art of Thai cooking lies in its ability to evoke emotions and transport one to the bustling streets of Bangkok or the serene beaches of Phuket with every bite. This is my favorite, they recalled. We nestled into the sectional, a film flickering in the background, its plot largely ignored by our wandering thoughts. The room lay shrouded in dimness, the flickering glow from the screen casting shadows across our faces. I found myself seated in the center, with Chris to my left, John to my right, and Lucas nearby. He positioned himself directly before me, reclining against the edge of the couch. Near, so near that I could sense the heat of his back pressing against my legs. I found myself laughing excessively. My smile stretched on, lingering in the air far longer than it should have. My body tilted instinctively, and I loathed myself for how effortless it all seemed. I repeatedly reassured myself that nothing was amiss, that all was pure and untainted, that I was merely relishing the companionship, basking in the warmth of attention like the sun breaking through after a prolonged winter. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware. I sensed my grip was faltering. Each laugh, each glance, each fleeting look drew me nearer to a boundary I had vowed never to breach. Yet, I allowed it to continue, for the simple reason that the truth? I had no desire to. That second dinner unveiled a threshold I was unprepared to shut. As it unfurled, the world around it started to transform. It began in ways that appeared insignificant. Small details. Lucas lingered into the night, the office quiet after John and Chris had departed. He claimed to have forgotten his phone, yet in truth, he had forgotten nothing at all. He hesitated, allowing the moment to stretch into an eternity. He lingered at the threshold, one hand poised on the doorknob, the other comfortably nestled in his pocket. He smiled gently, that familiar, contemplative smile that was ever present on his face. I informed him that I would retrieve his phone. It rested quietly on the coffee table, an unassuming presence in the room, yet he remained still. "I'm not in a rush," he remarked. A silence lingered, heavy with unexpressed thoughts. He strolled back into the living room, surveyed his surroundings, and then settled once more on the edge of the couch. Thus I took a seat as well. Not alongside him, initially not at all. Yet near enough that I could sense the warmth of his body in the air that separated us. Near enough that the silence held a comfortable ease. It was imbued with an electric energy. We engaged in conversation. It's not concerning anything profound, merely existence. Beloved dishes, recollections of youth. Yet, hidden within each word, a palpable tension lingered. An irresistible tug that I endeavored to dismiss, yet found impossible to resist. As he finally rose to depart, truly departing this time, he did not merely stroll out. He paused at the threshold, transformed, gazed upon me. His voice fell to a hushed murmur. "You're aware, I have often pondered the experience of stepping into David's shoes for just a single day." Once more a smile graced his lips, whispered a soft good night, and stepped out into the rain. I lingered in the hallway, my hand resting on the door, my heart pounding as if I had just stumbled upon a forbidden truth. On the following day, John paid a visit. He mentioned he was nearby and decided to take a look at the leaky kitchen faucet that David had brought up weeks prior. I welcomed him inside, appreciative of the companionship. We crouched low side by side beneath the sink. The room was confined. Our arms collided once, twice, and then his hand grazed mine, warm, firm, and weathered. He offered no apology. I remained steadfast, refusing to withdraw. We lingered beneath that sink far longer than necessary. Addressed issues that didn't exist. We conversed about a myriad of topics, yet somehow skirted around the very thoughts that lingered in both our minds. As he rose to his feet, he cast a glance my way and remarked, "David is fortunate. You're aware of that, aren't you?" I offered him a constrained smile, yet a deep ache stirred within me. That evening, as if destiny itself was challenging me to take a step deeper, Chris sent a text. He stood outside, a bottle of wine in hand, declaring that he possessed a tale too amusing to keep to himself. He entered with a hearty laugh, brimming with vitality, just as he always did. He playfully mocked my playlist. He playfully remarked on my penchant for soft sweaters that resemble a slice of paradise. He poured wine for us both, sank onto the couch, and before I realized it, we were shoulder to shoulder, laughing as we once did in college, before life tangled our paths. Suddenly, his tone transformed. "You know, I once believed that David wasn't worthy of you," he said, his gaze fixed intently on mine. "At this moment, I am certain of it. I ought to have intervened. I instructed him to return home, yet I remained seated. Let that moment drift between us like smoke, dense and elusive, slipping through our fingers. Following that moment, everything transformed. They started to visit with increasing frequency. Not always in unison. At times, solitude envelopes me. At times, there exists a rationale. At times, devoid of. A shattered seat, a book on loan. A longing for the warmth of freshly baked cookies from the oven. Any justification, I welcome them inside. Each and every time. The gazes lingered. The praises resonate profoundly. The silences are more charged. John would present small tokens. Fresh flowers and candles that he claimed exuded the essence of comfort. Chris began to address me as darling, his hand gently resting on the small of my back as he walked by. Lucas had fallen into a silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. Yet, in the moment our eyes met, an overwhelming sensation washed over me, as if I were laid bare before him, utterly vulnerable, yet paradoxically enveloped in a cocoon of security. Every man satiated a unique yearning within me. John instilled in me a sense of respect, as if I remained deserving of compassion. Chris brought laughter back into my life, rekindling a sense of vitality within me. And what of Lucas? He evoked a sense of fervor within me, of flames, a connection that transcended the need for words. I sensed it was descending into chaos. I realized I was gliding perilously near to a point of no return. Yet I pressed on. For within their gaze, I was not unseen. I found myself once more. Late one night, once the children were tucked in and after receiving a brief message from David stating he wouldn't return until Monday, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it, anticipating merely one of them. Yet all three remained in place. Beaming, the atmosphere shifted. It felt predestined, as if they had a plan in motion that no one spoke of.